And I'm going to attempt to go live on Facebook, which I always have about a 50-50 chance of that working. Thank you all for being patient with me right now. I know it's 9 o'clock and I like to be punctual. Let me see. Okay, it says it's being live streamed. Yeah, it's not where I want it to be. Shoot. Sorry, give me 1 minute, folks. I'm really sorry. You can feel free to chit chat among yourselves because it's in the wrong Facebook thing. Oh, Judy's coming. Hi, everyone. Give me just 1 second. I'm trying to, hi, Judy. I'm trying to get onto Facebook, which, as you know, that's what I need to do. Okay. Sorry, folks. I think it's working this time. Okay, I think that's it. I think we are on the right page, but I'm not sure. Okay, we're just going to make it fly for now. Thank you all for being here. Good on this glorious Saturday morning. I was chit-chatting with Cheryl and David just now that like how wonderful to have this beautiful morning and beautiful weekend ahead of us. But of course, we need to acknowledge that this isn't such a great thing for our climate, for our planet, for our snowpack, for our future drought resilience. Someone told me something though, that like the water, I heard this in a meeting. I don't really know what it means, but like, it's okay because the water content in the snow is remaining constant. I don't know what that means, but apparently we don't have to be as worried. So I'll take that. But good morning. I'm Lisa Reynolds, State Representative for Oregon House District 36. Which covers much of Portland's west side. I am running for re-election in a different district. If any of you all here from the new district, happy to have you here as well. Before we get started, I gave my staff the morning off. We've had a very busy week, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But I do want to acknowledge, and I actually printed it out, that the land we occupy as residents is unceded Indigenous land. The Tri-County area rests on traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Cathlamet, Clackamas, bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kayapuyah, Malala, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia River, creating both permanent communities and seasonal encampments. There are many other tribes and nations who lived in the region who are not collectively remembered. We want to take this moment to remember their contributions in shaping our state and our country. And thank you all for being here this morning. I want to keep this casual. We have a good tight-knit group here. Here's what I'm planning on talking about. And again, feel free to raise your hand. We don't have to like wait to the end for questions. Feel free to ask questions as we go along. I'm going to talk a little bit about the second week of this session, and it's the Oregon legislature holds short sessions on even numbered years, 5-week sessions, which really do feel like a sprint. Whereas in the odd numbered years, our short sessions are about 6 months long. And that feels like a marathon with some sprints in the middle. And everyone warned me, oh, it's weird. It's fast. It's, every day big things happen and big things die. And sure enough, that's what I've noticed this week. And the second week is probably the biggest week because it's where a lot of things live or die at the end of the week. Technically, the end of the week is Monday. There's a deadline at end of day Monday. And then I will give a little COVID update, including some masking stuff, the latest not so great news on kid vaccines, and happy to answer any questions on that. So we've just, again, not quite finished the second week of session because we started on a Tuesday. So the weekend's end of day Monday, which is Valentine's Day, which is also Oregon's birthday. So what that means is that if bills haven't passed certain hurdles, certainly by end of day Monday, but there was also a hurdle this past Monday, then they're not going to have a chance of passing in this short session. And indeed, that happened to one of my bills, voting rights restoration, which would restore the right to vote for adults who are incarcerated. There are a subset of adults who are incarcerated who maintain their right to vote. Those are people who are on nonviolent misdemeanors, but this was hoping to extend it to all adults in custody. My thinking on that bill and the reason why I'm in favor of it and the reason why I was pushing for it is, 95% of these, first of all, it's a civil rights, it's a voting rights for sure. There's kind of the moral high ground, but also most of these people return to their communities. And there is evidence that the more engaged you are in that community by the time you return, the better your chances are of reintegrating with that community and less likely you are to recommit crime. So I think it's a good bill. We made it better. We did a lot of really cool work sessions with counties, with the Secretary of State, with the Department of Justice, with the Department of Corrections, and we got it to a really good spot. I think the work we did this session improved the bill so that when it feels like we're ready as a legislature to do that work, it's really good to go. The other bills that are my personal priority, I've gotten involved quite a bit on issues and rights for incarcerated Oregonians. The other bill that I've been working on is the formation of a gender response coordinator and a gender response assessment for women who are incarcerated. In Oregon, we have one prison where women are held, and that's Coffee Creek. My exposure to folks at Coffee Creek is going to visit their newborns after women who are incarcerated there give birth at Meridian Park Hospital. And that's always kind of struck a chord with me, how tragic it is that now this baby and this mother are going to be separated. And this is just the first step in maybe some really following what some other states have done, which is to keep babies with their mothers when they're incarcerated. Look, most women who are incarcerated in Oregon are through nonviolent crimes, and usually crimes that are committed in deference to having had experienced trauma or being in situations where they're victims of domestic violence and also drug abuse, which I would argue probably is secondary to trauma or domestic violence, which of course is a form of trauma. And we know that most women, when they come into the system, so to speak, are the primary caregivers in their families. And when they leave prison, they resume being primary caregivers for their families. So what can we do during that time to really help them succeed once they leave prison? Thank you. I will enable live transcription. Thank you. Closed captioning has been enabled for those of you who want to view that. And thank you for requesting that, whoever did that. That's my oversight. So in any case, we had some lively hearings on that bill this week to do a gender response coordinator and a gender inclusive evaluation of that person. It has not been done. Women who are incarcerated there say they just get the men's baggy clothes, to wear when they're in prison. The one woman talks about not even being given a hairbrush shortly before she had to appear in front of a judge. So things that I think seem like little things, but can make a huge difference. The goal here is to have the gender response coordinator reach out to members of the community and their families and to come up with a list of recommendations again, my goal is to make their success as primary caregivers more feasible when they leave the system. So that has completed its work session, was voted out of committee, the House Judiciary Committee. It's now in a budget committee. So that's good. So that bill, as we kind of say, that bill's still alive. The person who started this bill is Representative Tana Sanchez. And I smile because she's now in charge of the budget. So the fact that she's the one who makes decisions on bills, means appropriately. I mean, and she was put in charge of the budget because of her moral compass, of her experience as being a social worker, and her, huge brains. So I feel pretty good about that bill being moved forward. And then the plan would be in the 2025 session, which sounds like a long way away, we will have a series of proposals to improve the lives and the outcomes for those women. So I'm really proud of that bill. I was interviewed by Lauren Dake on OPB. She used one sentence. We talked for 20 minutes. She mostly quoted a formerly incarcerated woman, which is more important. But she and I talked for like 20 minutes. She's very intrigued by the bill. So she's going to be tracking that too, which is great. And that was all. I don't think it was even on the audio OPB. I think it's just on their website. So, but which is good to bring knowledge to the bill. I will say one thing that was hard about that work session is there were some very thinly veiled anti-trans sentiments from our Republican counterparts. And it was pretty hard to listen to. But in any case, that is on its way. Other things that I've been really interested in, those, most people here know that I got my political chops through Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense. So gun violence prevention is extremely important to me. We don't have a classic kind of gun violence prevention policy bill like we did last year. I know I've said this over and over again, but I'm still so proud and thrilled that we passed safe storage, meaning guns have to be locked when not in use. We banned guns from the Capitol, so they're now metal detectors when you come into the Capitol building. And we've allowed school districts to ban guns from their campuses, to which most people say, wait, they weren't able to before. I got an update from Moms Demand Action this week. It was Moms Demand Action Advocacy Day, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Those were things I used to be kind of in charge of. And I kind of joked that I ran for office so I could stand at the bottom of that stairwell full of moms and say, welcome. So we're just doing that virtually. But in any case, I'm happy to say that there are some really great actions on gun violence prevention wending their way through the legislature this year. One is a bill that is looking at violence in general. And it's looking at a program that it's called hospital-based violence interruption programs. It's a mouthful, HBVIP, I think. This is an evidence-based intervention where we work with victims of violence to give them support they need to recover and to prevent the cycle of violence. A lot of times victims of violence, especially when we think of gun violence, especially when we think of young men, maybe in a gang-related incidents, just starts a whole cycle of violence. So this program and the Hallmark program in Portland is called Healing Hurt People. Almost like assigns a big brother or a big sister to someone in the emergency room when they're there as a victim of violence, and help shepherd their life really for the following year or two. And this has been shown to dramatically decrease violence, not only in that person's life, but in the community as a whole. So we're looking, there's a bill where, and this doesn't have to be just gun violence, but that certainly Healing Hurt People is focused on gun violence. It doesn't have to just be gun violence. It can be other violence like stabbings or, domestic violence, things like that. So we are looking to both fund those programs to help seed new programs doing work elsewhere in the state. And the goal is to get this to be paid for like a health visit through Medicaid. And when we do that, instead of just the program or the state or a community-based organization paying for that care and that service, we can have it be part of the health insurance system where a big chunk of it is paid by the federal government. So that's a really great bill, 4045. That will most likely be passed out of House Healthcare on Monday. Rachel Pruzak is the chair of House Healthcare, and she's a big fan, so I'm sure it'll get passed out. And then we just got to make sure that the budget people agree with it. And I certainly have been talking to both Representative Sanchez as well as State Senator Steiner Hayward. So the two people who make the biggest budget decisions, besides, of course, Governor Brown, Senate President Peter Courtney, House Speaker Dan Rayfield are the two budget chairs, which are Senator Steiner Hayward and Representative Tana Sanchez. And I will just say they are two very important mentors of mine who I feel like I have a very good relationship with. And they're the only two, I'm going to get political here for 1 minute. They're the only two legislators, in addition to Senator Kasha Lawrence Spence, who endorsed me in my primary. About 15 to 20 legislators endorsed my opponents, including Rob Fulmer, a friend of mine who's here. So they've been in my corner from day one. So it's not like, oh, now I have a path to power. It's just that I surround myself with the good, smart people. And I'm really, it's really an honor to see that their talent, integrity have been elevated to among the highest, the highest responsibility in our state. A couple other things I'm looking at for those of you who may have participated in the Moms Man Action meetings this week. I am sponsoring, it's called a budget note, asking that we devote a chunk of our ARPA funding. Oregon got $2.6 billion in ARPA funding, and that's American Rescue Plan Act. It's part of the COVID recovery monies. We're asking that we take a chunk of that. We're asking for 2 to 5% of that money, right? It's a big bucket, specifically for other violence, community violence prevention. So again, there are known programs that are doing evidence-based work. There are other programs that don't exist in our state that we know really work. And so this money is earmarked to go to those organizations through a process. That's wending its way through the budget process. It's not a bill, but I certainly have had some of my colleagues come up to me on the floor of the legislature, say, hey, I just met with moms. Let me know how I can help get this thing through the system. So we're working on strategy around that. Really proud of that work. I was bummed, like several of you on this call might have been bummed, especially you moms people. I'm looking at you, Judy, that we aren't doing Charleston loophole this year, that we aren't doing ghost guns this year. We're going to do both of those next year. Senator Manning and I are committed to that, assuming I'm still in the legislature next year. But I actually think this makes a little bit more sense for this point in time for our state. We have these resources coming our way. Let's really make sure we get them earmarked for the community-based interventions, the upstream, the preventative work that we know really makes a big difference. Those of you who follow me on social media know I've been meeting with these organizations, and it's really exciting and inspiring. I don't want to just, I tell my team, I don't like list of bills. So I don't want to just list bills. I want to just mention just a few more things. Farm worker overtime. So in 1938, the federal government said that employers have to pay overtime to employees who work over 40 hours a week, except for farm workers and a certain class of like home domestic workers. So we're going on, it's not quite 100 years, but it's getting close. I think that's 85 years, 86, since we acknowledged that we should pay people when they work more than 40 hours a week. So it's long overdue that we need to pay farm workers when they work more than 40 hours a week. So this is something that came up last year, did not prevail. We're hoping to pass it this year. The bill is actually, I think, acknowledges the bind that this will put farmers in. And we certainly are hearing about it every single day on the floor of the Oregon legislature. Republicans saying farm work is different. We can't set, the prices at which we sell our goods. I would argue as the market shifts, the prices will shift too. This may mean we all might have to pay more for a head of lettuce. I'm willing to do that for dignity and family wage. Maybe not it probably won't be family wage still, even if we pay overtime, but for better conditions for our farm workers. And I will say those of us who believe in farm worker overtime, do feel the policy is based in racist practices. And then the agricultural people will say that, stop calling us racist. I have heard some pretty bad tropes on the floor of the Oregon House. One was like, our workers, they're like family to us. And that's so cringy. And we almost thought we should respond, but we've just tried not to give it too much oxygen. But we certainly have a discussion, I will tell you, among my colleagues, like at what point do we like stand up and say, hey, wait a minute, that is a really sickening trope. It sounds like what people would say about their slaves, right? But right now we're letting them have their say because we're winning, right? We're going to have a work session on this bill. It's going to be passed out. And the bill is this phase in over years at what hour level kicks in overtime requirements. So it's not like starting next year, everything over 40 hours a week will have to be paid time and a half. It's a phase in over the next something like 6 or 7 years. And it also includes some tax rebates for farmers to try to offset that increased expense. Look, there's farm worker overtime bills in Washington and California. I can't say I'm an expert on them. So if we don't do something, we're going to lose our workers to Washington or California where they can get paid more fairly. And also, you know, we have enjoyed I think it's $2.50 head of lettuce on the backs of people who we don't pay or provide benefits for. So it's time we need to make a change in that situation. Of course, we need to elevate everyone's wages so everyone can enjoy that head of lettuce. The other big thing I'm working on, two more things I'm working on, and to me, this all falls in the same category, right? We have workers doing vital work in our communities and we underpay them. And they do it because they don't have many other options, or they do it because they love the work, which is not farm worker, but maybe childcare, maybe behavioral health workers. So we are looking to, and they tend to be, I would say in terms of behavioral health and childcare, those tend to be done by women. That work tends to be done by, and in childcare, certainly by people of color. So we have long undervalued and underpaid that work. And those of us, you know, it's been a while since I've had kids in childcare. We'll see what Erica's grandson will be doing. We, you know, those of us who've benefited from having good childcare for our kids have really done so at the expense of those workers, you know, and it just doesn't meet economics, the economic laws. I've said before that they don't get paid enough and it's too expensive. So there needs to be something to fill that gap. And I think that's going to have to be some sort of government subsidy, which already exists in some form, but we're trying to fill that gap a little bit better. So there's $100 million child care package wending its way through our legislature, shepherded by Representative Karin Power, who's the chair of the Early Childhood Committee and who has little kids. So it is interesting that she has shared this, so I can share this she has shared this publicly, that her, you know, she has a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old. And because of COVID closures, you know, she's often has, you know, Finn on her lap during pretty important committee hearings, or, you know, we're there having an important discussion. You hear like a bang, bang, bang in the background. I mean, her childcare has had to close because of COVID on and off. And that, you know, that may not be what she's going to fix with this bill, but she certainly understands the struggles and pressures of being a working mom. The other thing is in terms of the behavioral healthcare sector, we are looking at bonuses and one-time payments for behavioral healthcare workers to retain and recruit. And then again, looking at how we can increase reimbursement long-term for their service. When people talk about behavioral healthcare parity, that we should be paying and there should be access to behavioral healthcare as well as we do for the most part in physical healthcare. Obviously, there's problems in our physical healthcare as well. But there's such a big gap. I tell parents all the time, hey, if your daughter had terrible pneumonia or if your daughter had leukemia, I'd be getting you into the best healthcare, you know, center in the city today. But, you know, the severe depression, we're going to be cobbling together a few things to get her through the next week or two till we can get you in with a specialist. So I'm going to stop talking. I am happy to take questions. I will tell you that, I was going to do a little COVID update, but yes. Okay, I'll do real quickly. The governor announced an end to the mask mandate. The parameter she is using is the prediction is that by the end of March, hospitalizations will be below 400. They are, I just looked at the number today. You know, we hit a high of about 1,100, which was a little lower than the doom and gloom peak we heard about in early December, I think. And I've met with, it's Peter Gardner of OHSU who does the modeling. He came to our COVID committee. I mean, there was this fear of this huge peak when we looked at what was happening on the East Coast, but he said Oregonians backed up. They stopped their small indoor gatherings. They started wearing masks more, and we really did blunt that curve. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Things could have been much worse in this latest spike of the Omicron. We still have we continue to have hospital overwhelm. We have 1,300 National Guard helping in our hospitals. We have 1,200, I call them travel nurses, but they're folks who come in from other states to help all aspects of hospital care. We are at or near hospital capacity, but again, it's still less bad than we predicted. Our spike here was about 1,100 people in the hospital, which was similar to the Delta surge. We are now down to about 950 hospitalizations. So it's coming down. Their rubric for removing the mask mandate is 400 hospitalizations. Of course, the question I ask the folks in charge of making these decisions is, so when do we turn, when and if or when do we turn that mask mandate back on? And the answer was, it's complicated. So I know there's gonna be situations where I'm gonna continue to wear a mask for a while, including in my exam room. And I'm sorry, one more thing I wanna say is deaths are still rising. So, the case count comes down, hospitalizations lag a little bit. Hospitalizations are starting to come down, right? Case counts started coming down a week or two ago. Hospitalizations are coming down. Deaths are still rising because deaths lag. People are in the hospital for a week or two before they die often. So we still have a tough several weeks ahead of us. Continue to wear your masks. I think the thing that's tricky is the Oregon Department of Education is recommending masks for kids in schools until the end of the school year. But because there's no longer a state mask mandate, that will be up to individual school districts. They're saying that would be based on, community spread, vaccination rates, air filtration, and their ability to socially distance. So I do think leaving those decisions to individual school districts is tricky. And then in terms of vaccines for kids, I sent out my newsletter this week, which was kind of good news, we thought, which is that the FDA was going to start considering vaccines for the 6-month-olds through 4 years of age. So it's approved for 5 years old and older. That 6 month through 4 has not been approved yet. The preliminary studies, and they're using a really low dose. I'm kind of like, why don't you use a little bit higher dose of 3 micrograms, showed good antibody response in the 6-month-old to the 2-year-olds, but not so great between the 2 and 4-year-olds. The reason the FDA, I think, was preparing to maybe look at this before we get more data on what happens when we add a 3rd dose, which is what Pfizer's doing now in this age group, is there are other things besides antibody response that help us fight off COVID. And they thought maybe some response is better than no response. Well, yesterday the FDA said, you know what, we're going to wait until we have data on the 3-dose response to the Pfizer COVID vaccine. So that pushes everything out to April. On Monday, they were saying, we're planning on shipping vaccines the week of February 21st. I know a lot of parents were doing a happy dance, and I'm sorry that that's going to be dialed back. I think they're probably influenced a little bit by the declining COVID cases, although we're declining. That still means, the area under the curve, there's still a lot of people still to get COVID and to be hospitalized with COVID and to die from COVID, but maybe they're feeling a little bit less urgency than they were a few weeks ago. So on that note, I'm happy to take questions. Please keep them respectful. Oh, yeah, I know Cheryl will. Cheryl.
I have 2 questions about bills and where they are in the process. I'm particularly concerned after reading the Oregonian over the weekend about the seismic fuel storage. And I wondered how that bill was progressing and if it was strong enough. And the second bill that I'm really interested in is establishing legislative pay so that will expand the opportunities for people to become legislators.
Great, thank you. Both really good questions. So the first bill, it's the CIE or CEI hub. So, when you guys drive out on, towards St. Helens and you see all those big vats along the Willamette River, those are filled with flammable fuel-based, petroleum-based substances. which in an earthquake, where that's the liquefaction zone, would be a disaster's too timid a word for that. So there's a bill in conjunction working with City of Portland, Multnomah County, lots and lots of agencies. I know the bill is moving forward, and in talking to my colleague Daisy Graber, who could probably talk about this for half an hour, or Senator Michael Dembro, is wending its way through the process and will pass. Is it strong enough? Is it fast enough? I'm not sure. But it is something people are feeling pretty optimistic that it can, if we get to work ASAP, we can hopefully prevent a horrendous disaster on top of the, subduction zone earthquake. And I've heard as of Friday, Representative Zach Hudson has been involved in this, bringing up the pay of legislators. And this isn't because, I personally want to get paid more. It's because the work of being a legislator pays so poorly that you have to be at a certain point in your life to be able to afford to do it. Like, I can work part-time as a physician, and my kids are grown. I don't have to pay for childcare, blah, blah, blah. It really limits who can run for office by the low pay. So this brings up the pay to, I think, $57,000 a year. And my understanding is that's moving its way through the system. I think that's a good thing. That's a bill I actually have to read this weekend. So that's all I know. But I'm glad Zach texted me yesterday, because I do have an update on that. That seems to be working. So thank you for that. Gaynell.
Hi,
Good
I don't
morning.
have a question, but thank you for the report on all the legislation. I just wanted to say thank you for your visit to Rose Haven recently. I live in Northwest neighborhood, just a couple of blocks from the Haven, and I volunteer there every week. And until the city can get some safe rest places or housing for especially vulnerable women, at least Rose Haven offers them a little bit of dignity every day. So thank you for the visit, Lisa.
Oh, thank you so much. And that was part of the point in time homeless count. It's always eye-opening to go out there and talk to people with, lived experiences, is a corny way of saying it. But I think about that a lot. And I know that, Mayor Wheeler is announcing some things this week. I'm not sure where it's all going to end up. And Rose Haven's moving, as I'm sure you know, Gaynell, over to, actually we'll be in House District 36, the corner of Gleason and 18th, what used to be that World Cup Coffee or something. They're super excited about being able to serve more people. So I hope to be at that grand opening. Maybe I'll see you there, but thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
We need to do more. Any other questions or comments? Great. We don't need to stay on much longer. I mean, I'm happy to hang out here with anyone. I know, Bill, you asked a question, you emailed a question, and hopefully, I can't remember the question, but hopefully I know I asked Maida or Christopher to get back to you. If you want to come public with that, but I don't want to put you on the spot either.
I had trouble get rid of my mute. I was asking if your position on the working lands bill. This is a bill that we weren't aware of when we visited with you in January. And this bill is one that it came from the governor's executive order with instructions to the I can't think of it now. Not the DEQ, but the supervisor of the DEQ. That commission, assigning that commission the task, find a way to study and then have actions that land managers or farmers can use to increase the manner in which their soil stores water, retains fertility, and stores carbon. So this is a bill that is
yes. Yeah. Yes.
mixed benefits, very big for agricultural communities and useful for climate carbon control as well. So the question was, is that at this point, something that's come to your attention that you can support?
It sure sounds like something I can support. And if it has a fiscal associated with it, so if it's going to cost the state money, it'll come to my budget committee. So I am a newly appointed member of the Joint Ways and Means, which is a fancy way of saying budget. Joint means there's senators and House members on it. Budget on natural resources, which I have been loving. So I will look into that bill, and I'll look into the bill. And if it has budget associated with it, which I suspect it does, it sounds like something that's going to cost money because everything costs money. Then I'll actually be able to hear it and vote on it in my natural resources subcommittee. But I'll look into that and get back to you. And thank you, Rob. The CEI is critical energy infrastructure, which is what I was trying to refer to in that the bill for the dangerous area along the river. And then in terms of climate change bills, there's a few coming through this session. The Elliott State Forest, which is a state-owned forest, I think the largest state-owned old growth forest in Oregon. We are looking to put that in the hands of Oregon State University's kind of forestry program to be a place of study and not a place of harvesting. And I'm almost sure that's going to pass this session. The other bills that I consider climate change bills are the right to cool. So in response, of course, to the heat dome where we lost 100 Oregonians last June, and most of those Oregonians were because they didn't have air conditioning units were in their apartments. So there are two bills working their way through the system, both to help supply those air conditioning units or heat pumps, which are a little better for the environment, as well as making sure that landlords can't prevent those units from being placed into individual apartments. And REACH standards, thank you, Inga. REACH standards, which has to do with building codes. I don't know that very well, Inga. If you want to chime in, please feel free to. My understanding is that too is working its way through the system. There are a lot of other things. You know, it's been so interesting. We met with the Department of Transportation yesterday, a group of us, about so the Oregon Department of Transportation is getting huge amounts of money as part of the infrastructure bill. A lot of it is very specific on how it can be spent. And there's this discretionary amount of $400 million, which they're like, I mean, it's hardly anything. And we're like, hey, wait a minute. It's kind of crazy when you get in government. And the ways that they're talking about using that last tranche where they have discretionary is like more road building, even though a big chunk of it is already, targeted for road building. So that's been very frustrating. I do think I've come to think that every single bill that comes through the legislature, we have to think about where is it in terms of climate change, right? Does it worsen it? Does it hasten it? Does it improve it? Or is it neutral? And it's amazing when you think of it that way, how many bills impact where we are on climate change without being overtly, a climate change bill or even, so obviously transportation, huge. So I do think we talk about the dollar cost of every bill. We talk about the revenue or tax implications of every bill. Representative Barbara Smith Warner is talking about adding an analysis of what this does for racial equity in our state, every single bill. And then I think we need to add to that analysis of what this does in our I don't want to say goal, but the requirement that we slow down climate change. And so a lot of us are starting to look at bills, even that might be tangentially involved with, climate change. Obviously, transportation is not tangentially, that is square in the middle of climate change. So I do think we're all thinking about, and that's why I'm really enjoying the natural resources subcommittee, because everything that comes through there has a impact on climate change, either positive or negative. We had a hearing the other day on fish hatcheries, and those are super controversial. And it's not just like, okay, yes, check. No, we're having really good discussions on inventory. What do we have in the state? What do we need in terms of kind of fish health? What do we need in terms of, our fisheries industry and what is doing more harm than good. So so I think we're rethinking everything, at least trying to. But thanks for that. If anyone else wants to chime in on the REACH standards, I'm a little bit less familiar with them.
I can do a very quick summary.
Great.
It would permit on the state level for local jurisdictions to upgrade their building standards on new construction, which is currently preempted. And while I personally regret it doesn't make it mandatory, which would be a much more substantive approach towards a carbon-free future, it's a first step to allow those counties and cities and local areas where there is a willingness to embrace these standards to go forward.
Thank you. I knew I was forgetting something about it. So it's about what local jurisdictions can do. Thank you so much, Inge. I appreciate you hopping in. Love this group. Well, great. Thank you all for being with me this morning, for taking your time. I am having an end of session town hall after session ends. And unfortunately, I don't have that right at my fingertips when that is. Sorry. I think it's the session ends on Monday, March 7th. So I think it's that week, like Wednesday. And I apologize. I'll make sure you guys get that notice. But I'm grateful for all of you for spending some time this Saturday morning with me. And keep up the good work, keep up the activism, reach out for anything, and have a great rest of your day.
I did have,
Yes,
to note-
Bill, yes.
note when your March meeting is the 10th of March, was announced at 6:30.
Great. Thank you, Bill. You're so great.
Thursday, 10 March at 6:30, if anybody's still around to hear the message.
Thank you so much, Bill. I'm really grateful for you. I should have had that.
I don't have a picture. I'm a voice from the darkness.
No,
Wow.
you're a voice from the light. You're always a voice from the light, Bill. Thank you. And this is not having Maida here. She would have been like, we're looking actually, and I will just say we're looking to who to invite to that town hall. If there's someone you really want to hear from, whether it's a fellow legislator or an agency person or an advocate, feel free to let us know. We just started talking about it this week, it's always great to have Dacia, but I also would love to have some other folks for you all to meet. So if you have any thoughts on that, just let me know, email or text or put it in the chat right now. But thank you all so much for being with me this morning. It's great to see your faces.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Stopping the live stream. I'm stopping the recording.